We're live.
Hey everybody, Jeff over at MetaStock. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for coming. It's good to see you. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. It helps a great deal. If you have questions as we go, there's a questions box on the right-hand side. You can click on it, ask any question you want. We're very good at answering questions. And let's go ahead and get started. So today's demonstration is designed to instruct you on using MetaStock and the accompanying software plugins. It is not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using specific indicators and features within the software. The information, software, and techniques presented today should only be used by investors who are aware of the risk inherent in trading. MetaStock and its employees shall have no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of the software, any trading strategies, or any information provided in connection with the company. MetaStock and its employees do not endorse the purchase of a security, nor are they paid for the promotion of a security. No information contained in the presentation today should be construed as an investment advice or the solicitation to buy a security. So with all that out of the way, I want to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Kevin Nelson. Kevin actually had a long history with MetaStock. He hired me to start working at MetaStock, I don't know, 27 years ago. Actually, exactly 27 years ago. So he's been affiliated with the company for a number of years now. And he runs a service called LearnMetaStock.com. And today he's going to talk about identifying trendline breakouts and with MetaStock. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get you started. Kevin, you ready to go?
I am. Thanks, Jeff.
Of course. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter here.
Okay. That is, you have been there 27 years. How is that even possible? That is crazy.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, time is flying. That's all I can say.
We're going to keep slipping into the future. All right, I can see your screen.
Perfect.
That's a reference you'll get for sure. I can hear you. I'm going to get out of the way. It's your turn.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Jeff. Yeah, as Jeff said, I've been with MetaStock for, I mean, I can't even believe how long it's been. It's been a long, long time to say the least. But anyway, long story short is in 2008, I left the company. I started this company here, LearnMetaStock.com. And what I do at LearnMetaStock is I just try to help people with their program in whatever shape, form, whatever the case may be. I do it a lot of different ways. And so what I'll do is I just basically want to get into the presentation here now. And then at the end of our presentation, I'll go through the different services and our website and show you some different things about, how we can help you out there. All right. So today what we're going to be talking about is I've got a presentation here, which I call Trendline Scanning for Breakouts. And how this actual class came together is like a lot of the classes that I do is there are suggestions from my customers, people just looking for different ways to use the program, and using trend lines, for example, is one very, very popular way to go about it. So what we're going to be doing here today is we'll start off with just some of the different trend line tools that you have available and how they work. And I know that most people who've been using MetaStock are familiar with the basic ones and so forth, but where we're going to be spending our time today is on another tool inside the program, which is called the linear regression trend line. And what's so nice about the linear regression trend line, it's a formula-driven trend line that you'll be able to use in a lot of different ways here. So I'm going to give you a number of different ways to use this, but one thing that we'll do is I'll show you how to actually do a scan or an exploration looking for securities that are breaking above a trend line, below a trend line, and so forth. There's a lot of different ways to do this. And since it is formula driven, you can use it in other tools or other power tools in MetaStock. For example, we can use it to back test different trading ideas using this as well. We can use it in the expert advisor. So a lot of different ways to kind of go about this. So let me jump over here to the program. And we'll start here with a chart here of the SPY. The SPY is just an ETF, the S&P 500. And over here on the left-hand side, this is the main trend line tool that most people are familiar with. And when you click on it, you'll see your pointer turns into a pencil. And to work with it, you just click a beginning point and click an ending point and click again. And that sets your trend line on your chart. Now, to actually work with this trend line, how this thing again came about, or how this class came about, is people were asking me, well, is there something that I can do with this trend line rather than just drawing it on my chart? Can I use it somehow to identify securities that are breaking above it or below it or whatever the case may be? And unfortunately, with this tool here, the Trendline tool that's in your menu right here, there's unfortunately not a lot that you can do with it, but there are a few things. Like if you double click directly on it, one of the things that you can do, they've made some really nice adjustments and additions to the Trendline tool. For example, like down here at the bottom, you can actually have it show these different types of labels. For example, you can have it show like percentage changes or point changes. You can even have it show the number of periods, and you can even put in your own custom label on it. But say, for example, like I'll put in a percent change, click on OK, and this will tell me exactly how far or how much the move is from this point all the way up to this point that I drew on my chart. Now, if you're using this to measure how far something is moving, one thing I would recommend is that over here on the right-hand side of this dialog here, there's a feature called the snap mode. And what this snap mode will give you is it'll give you a choice between none, period, and price. So first of all, let me go ahead and select price here. We'll click on OK. And now you'll see this trend line has actually jumped up to these price bars right here. And you'll notice that the beginning of the trend line actually is directly connected to this first price bar, and then the end is directly connected to that price bar. And so now you'll see our change here is over 8%. So now it's being very, very accurate of exactly how much it's moved from this point to this point here. And this, again, this is a feature that they added in the latest version, which is, again, a really nice feature, I think. Now, the other thing that you might want to pay attention to is you have this other choice, which is called period. And when you select period and click on OK with this trendline tool, when you click an end of this trendline tool, and let me kind of really zoom in here so we can see this here. But if I grab the end, you'll notice that when I move it to another price bar, I can't drop it in between the price bars. So when I have the choice selected as period, it has to go directly to a particular period on your chart, and you can't drop it in between the price bars. So for that reason, what I'll do typically is I'll just leave the trend line set for the period, so it's drawing again exactly from one bar to the next bar there. So anyway, so the problem with the trend line tool that we have available is there's, again, not a lot that we can do with it. We can use it to document what the prices are doing from point to point, but that's pretty much it. That's the bad news. The good news is that you do have actually a few different indicators here that you can use in a number of different ways. And the one we're going to take a look at is called the linear regression trend line. Now, to plot the linear regression trend line can be done in a number of ways. So for example, if you go up here to the insert menu, go to all annotations, you can find the linear regression trend line tool right here. It's a drawing tool right there. You can select that. Or you can also go to the regression, and you can also find it through the menu here. Then in addition to that, over here on the right-hand side of your chart, if you click on this tool right here, this is the linear regression trend line. Just select that, pick a beginning point, and then pick an ending point and click again, and that'll draw it as well. So again, a number of different ways to access this tool. Now, when I drew this trend line, what you'll see that is different is I picked this point and I drew it to this point, but the trend line is drawn right through the middle of the prices. And the question is, what exactly is it doing? Why is it selecting or drawing it through the middle of the prices? Well, this is a formula-driven trendline tool here. And what it does now is in this price field, in this case, for example, by default, it's looking at the closing price of each one of these bars and then using what's considered to be a best fit to draw this line between those price bars. And so based off the closing prices, a lot of times what will happen is when you draw this tool, it'll go right through the middle of the price bars there like that. Now, the other choices that you have here, for example, inside the price field here, is that you can also base it off the open, high, low, and also, again, the close. So let's say, for example, let me go ahead and close this down here for just a sec, and I'm going to move this over here just to the end here of our chart. We've got a pretty nice little move right here, and I'm going to shorten this up here. We'll bring this here. And let's say that we're drawing a trend line here over the last couple of weeks here of kind of what's happening here with the prices. The way that most people would draw a trend line here is in an upward move is they would draw it across the bottom of the price bars like this. But again, with a linear regression trend line, since this is formula driven, it's basing this case, for example, off the closing price. So in an upward move like this, one thing that you can do is we can adjust what it's actually being, what it's being calculated off of. Go ahead and select it and open it up. And in this case, for example, maybe what you might want to do on an upward move is have it based off the low of the price bar. So we'll go ahead and do that. Click on OK. And now you'll see how this line is shifted to the bottom of the price bars. And in this case, this is probably closer to more how most people would actually draw a trend line during an upward move like this. So let's go ahead and scroll back here a little bit. And we'll find a time here where we've got a pretty bearish move. So let's say, for example, in this bearish move right here, let's go ahead and draw a trend line there. Again, I'll go ahead and pick a starting point and I'll pick an ending point, click again. You'll see it's drawn right through the middle of the prices. So I'll go ahead and double click directly on the trend line tool. And this time on a downward move, maybe what I would do is I'd have it based off the highs, click on OK. Oh, let's try that again. Let's try that. There we go. Clicked on that. We'll click on the high. Hang on for just 1 second. Let me see. I don't see the adjustment being made. And we'll go ahead and click on high, click on OK. Hang on for just 1 second. And let me take a look at this one more time. Let me go ahead and adjust it here. What'll happen here, again, like I say, it'll be adjusted based off these different price fields. So let me go ahead and base it off the high. We'll click on apply. There we go. And you see now it's actually shifted off the top of the price bars. So the point being is that when you go to draw this tool, for example, you have to choose the price field that you want it based off of. So if the prices are moving up, generally what you want to do is you want to have it based off the low of the price bars. And if it's based on, and vice versa, in a downward move, you want to have it based off the high of the price bar. So depending on how you want to do it. So let me go ahead and select that. And we'll go back over here to the right-hand side. And we'll kind of zoom in here and let me grab this one. Now, the other thing you'll notice here is that when you draw this tool on your price bars and you're dragging it around your chart, you'll see that it'll automatically adjust to the data as you move it around there. And again, that's basically being calculated off the data as you move it around there. So the first thing I want to do here to take this a little bit further is I want to make sure that I've got this set up to the number of periods that I want. If you hover directly over that line, you'll see that the periods that it's currently covering right now is 12. And I want to extend that 2 periods to make it 14. So I'm going to go 1, 2 more periods. And now you'll see it has a periods of 14. And it's also given me the slope there. And it is a positive number. I know that that trend line is pointing up to the right. Now, there's a couple other indicators that are going to be really helpful when using this tool. And we'll go up here to our indicator quick list, for example. And what you want to do is you want to do a search on linear. And by doing a search on linear, what you'll find is 2 other indicators here that have to do with the linear regression indicator itself. The first one is the linear regression indicator, and the second one is the linear regression slope. So with the indicator, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and drag this directly on top of our price bars. And I'll let go at this point. And you'll see that the default here is going to be set at 14. And the price field is set to close. So that's what I want to make sure that this matches up with this one here. So we'll go ahead and click on OK, and that'll plot this indicator here. Now, I want to go ahead and double click on the trend line tool, and I want to make sure that this is also being calculated off the close, and it's also set to 14 periods. And once I have those settings correct, what you'll notice is at the very end of the trend line here, this is going to ride on this indicator line here. So as I move this indicator around, I'm going to drag it around here on my chart. You'll notice at the very end will always intersect, in this case, this blue line here. And this is called the linear regression indicator. So what's so important about this is that once you actually kind of figure out that this line here represents the ending point of the trend line itself, all you have to do is plot this line or this indicator on your chart, and you could look at any point on your chart and you know exactly what the prices are doing in relation to the end of the trend line at that point. So for example, like right here, I know for sure if I drag this trend line back here and the end is right here, I know these price bars are going to be underneath the end of the trend line. So let me go ahead and drag it back, and we'll see how this works, and drag it right over here. And since, again, right here, you can see that these are clearly below the end of the trend line. And then vice versa, for example, if we bring it over here, you'll see that these price bars are above that indicator. So again, if I grab the trend line tool here and drag it over to this section, I know that all these price bars are going to be above the end of the trend line during this period of time. So really what's so important is that I can look at this indicator on anything at any point, and I know exactly what the prices are doing in relation to the end of the trend line at that point in time. So once you kind of understand how that works, the next tool that you want to take a look at here is we'll go back up here to our list, and then you're going to want to take a look at this tool right here, which is called the linear regression slope. Now I'll go ahead and drag this one up here to the very top because we're going to plot this in its own inner window. So I want to again make sure that it's using 14 periods and it's based off the closing price. We'll click on OK. And then this will plot another indicator up here at the top of our window. Now this indicator here, what this is actually showing us, it's showing us the slope of the trend line itself. And what we're looking at here is that if this line is moving up like this, what this means is that during this period, the trend line is becoming more and more positive or sloping up steeper and steeper to the right. And vice versa, when this line is moving down like this means that the trend line is becoming less and less steep and starting to point down to the right. Okay, so I can again look at this indicator and I can identify specific points where it's becoming more positive or less positive. So just for example, let me go ahead and drag this indicator again over to this section right here. And let's zoom in here so we can really see this little section of our data here. All right, so as I drag this trendline tool over here to the right, you'll notice that as I move it over, it's becoming steeper and steeper to the right. And when I get to this point right here, this is the steepest that the trend line got during this little section of data right here. And then from this point forward, then it became less and less steep, or actually started pointing downward. And so for example, I'll kind of drag it over, and now you can see it's starting to point down as I drag it further and further. And the steepest that it got in this downward move was at this point right here on April 8th. So I'll go ahead and keep going down, and that's the steepest that it got pointing downward. And if you hover over that line, you'll see that the slope in this case is a negative 5.44. And then if I start to move it to the right here, you can see how it's starting to flatten out and starting to move up. And again, if I hover over the end, it'll tell me what the slope is, and this number right here is going to match up exactly with this number right here on the indicator. Now, once we understand what this indicator is and how to interpret it, one other thing that's really will be helpful to you is that if you double click directly on the indicator, go into the horizontal lines and put in a value of 0, and then click on add, and then click on OK. What this is going to do is that this blue line now is going to tell us exactly where the trend line either became positive or became negative. So for example, again, I'll go ahead and drag this back here. Right, so this is the steepest that it got during this little section. And then once I get to this point right here on April 2nd, you'll see that it's a negative value. And if I go back one bar here, or this point right here, you'll see it's a positive value. So again, I'll go ahead and move this forward just a couple bars here. We'll hover over that line. You'll see it has a slope of a positive, let's see, right there, a positive 0.42. And that, oops, let me go one more bar here actually. There we go, a positive 0.16. That's that value right there. And if I go one more bar here, drag it one more bar, you'll see that now it's a negative at negative 0.2. So again, what this line is representing is exactly where the trend line is either pointing up and or pointing down. So in this case, for example, like here it's negative, right? It's still sloping down, But at this point right here, this is where it started to become positive here, in this case on April 14th. And if I drag it back just one bar, you'll see that on April 14th, it had a negative value of negative 0.46. So again, looking at this indicator up here at the top, this is a really helpful indicator to tell me exactly what this trend line is doing at any point in time here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this all the way over here to the right-hand side of our chart. And I'm going to go ahead and go all the way over to the very last bar here. Now, one thing you want to be aware of here when moving or dragging this indicator around, let me kind of zoom in here so again we can see this. But you'll see that right now it's set at 14 periods. If I click on it and continue dragging it to the right, for example, what will happen is it'll keep shortening up the length of that trend line tool. So now you'll see I'm already down to 10 periods. So if you want to make sure that it's still covering the 14 periods, just make sure that you don't drag it too far. Just drag it to that very last bar and then drop it at that point. And then that should be then set correctly. All right, so I want to make sure that this is set for 14 periods. I've got my indicator here plotted on the price chart, and up here at the very top is our slope indicator. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here is I want to set this up and save this as what's called a default template. Now, a default template, what this allows you to do is once you set up a default template, every time you open up a chart, whether you've looked at it before or not, it'll actually open up exactly how you want it to look. So default templates are a really handy feature inside the program because I can make whatever changes I want, and then I can say that I want all my charts to look exactly the same way from that point going forward. So to set up a default template, put on whatever type of indicators, the colors, whatever you want, and then right-click inside your chart and choose Save as Default Template down here at the about halfway down. It'll ask if you want to replace your existing default. We'll say yep. And then what you need to do is you need to close down all your charts. So we'll click on File, Close All. And then once that's done, click on File and then Delete Smart Chart. Now, by deleting the smart chart, this will ask just to make sure that this is what you want to do. You'll say yes and click on OK. That literally wipes out MetaStock short-term memory. So from that point forward, whether you've looked at a chart before or not, every time you open up a new chart, they'll all look exactly the way that you want them to look. So the reason why I want to do that is now we're going to jump over to some of the different tools here that you have available and see what we can do with these this linear regression trend line indicator. So once you become a subscriber to LearnMetaStock, one of the things that I do is that whenever I'm showing how to, follow a trading strategy or duplicate or something like that, I'll always create the formulas and it'll then allow you to download those formulas directly into your MetaStock program. So one thing that LearnMetaStock will really be helpful there to you is I can save you a massive amount of time and effort and basically creating and showing you how to work with these different formulas. So all of our formulas, whenever we create one, we'll always have LMS at the beginning of them. So for example, like in this case, I'll do a search here in the Explorer of just LMS, and all of the formulas, for example, will all start with LMS dash and then the name of the formula. So in this case, for example, I want to scroll down and I want to find this one right here, which is called the LMS dash linear regression exploration. Let's go ahead and open it up. Now this exploration I've created here, you'll see that I've got a number of the different fields here inside here covering A through L, or I should say, and these are the explanations of what each one of these means. So for example, like on the first column of data, whenever you run an exploration, what's going to happen is that these reports are going to be generated from the exploration, and in the report, the data is going to be displayed to you in columns. And at the top of each column, you can customize what the name is on the top of each column. So for example, the first column that's going to be in the report that I'll show you here in a minute is just going to have the word day. So day is going to give us the day of the month. Now the reason why I put day of that I have this formula here inside this column is because one of the things that when you run a scan, it's really important that you verify that you're running your scan on good data. So this is just a real simple, easy, quick way to make sure that when you run a scan, it's running through the data that you want to look at. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But anyway, so up here at the top, these are the descriptions of these different tabs here. So column B and column C is going to identify, for example, whether the slope is positive or negative. Column D and column E is going to identify whether the slope just became positive or became negative. Column F and G is going to identify if the closing price is above or below the trend line. And lastly, column H and I is going to identify if the close just crossed above the trend line or the closing price just crossed below the trend line. All right, so let's go ahead and run a scan here. We'll just click on OK. And then what you need to do is you need to choose a database that you want to run your scan on. So in this case, for example, I'm going to choose the Dow Industrial Securities. So we've got 30 securities inside this folder here. I want to go ahead and run a scan on all 30 of these. Over here on the right-hand side, I'll tell it to run through 1,250 daily records, which is equivalent to about 5 years of historical data. I'll tell it to run through the most current data that it can get. And then down here at the bottom, I'll go ahead and click on our Start Exploration. So this will go ahead and open up our next page here. And this will basically show us the results of these explorations. So as you can see here up at the very top, this will give us a status of kind of what's happening, if anything is being rejected and so forth. Now, this is what I'm really looking at right now, this rejected. I want to make sure that nothing is being rejected. And one of the things that I'll do is that after running a scan like this, is that I'll take a look up here at the very top, make sure I don't have anything rejected, and then I'll look at this column of data right here, which is called day. So this column is telling us up through what day that we just scanned on. So I'll click on this maybe a couple times and see if it changes and see if I have any securities with anything other than the day that I want. So since today is the 13th, I need to make sure everything has a 13th in there. So it's just a real quick, easy way to make sure that you're scanning on the data that you want. So next, I've got these two columns of data. I've got the positive slope and the negative slope. So let me go ahead and make this screen here a little bit smaller. And let's go ahead. Actually, you know what? Hang on for just 1 second. I'm going to drag this one over here a little bit. And let's go back into that report here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I want to open up some charts here, but I want to make sure that these really kind of like aren't in the way. So I'm just trying to move these over here a little bit. All right, so now you'll see we've got a positive slope and a negative slope. So the positive slope is going to tell us if the slope of the trend line itself is either pointing up to the right, or the negative slope is going to identify if it's pointing down to the right. So again, we'll go ahead and we can sort the data by clicking on the column heading. And in this case, for example, I'll go ahead and select 3M. And this, of course, is going to then open up the chart over here on the right-hand side. And you can see very clearly that the trend line is obviously pointing up to the right. So let's look for a negative slope. We'll go ahead and select that one. And you can see Disney's the one at the top. So we'll go ahead and select that. And this should have a slope pointing down. And as you can see, that's exactly what's happening there. Then we have a slope positive cross. So this is identifying whether the slope of the trend line just became positive, and this one will identify if the slope just became negative. So we'll sort on that by clicking on it and see if there's any changes there. And there's one security, so Boeing actually just became positive. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. And there you can see, like, for example, the slope of the trend line right here is 0.05. So this is very, very flat right here. So let me go ahead and grab that trend line, and I'm going to bring it back just one bar. And here you can see yesterday it had a negative slope of negative 0.24. But today at the close, it's just starting to point up, or just as you can see, it's also up here at the very top, you can see on the indicator is just going above the value of 0. And it's just becoming positive at that point. All right, so that's identifying a positive change right there. Then we also so positive, negative, okay, and so Okay, and let's see if there's any negative crosses. And if you click on it a couple times and there's no changes, that just means that it's not finding anything. There's no securities that just became a downward slope here today. Then we have the closing price above the trend line, and we'll have a lot of choices here, but the one at the top of the list is Procter & Gamble. We'll take a quick look at this one. And what we're looking at here is we're just looking to see what the closing price is in relation to the end of the trend line. And here it's clearly above it. And we'll just drag this over here one more, and we'll look for any securities where the close is below the trend line. And the one at the top of the list is Microsoft. So we'll go ahead and select that. Yeah, go ahead and bring that open. And as you can see, Microsoft, the reason why this one came up is because that closes below the end of the trend line. All right. All right. So now the question is, okay, so hopefully, you've got an idea of what this report will give you. So then the question is well, what can you do with it? What is this information going to do for me? So one of the nice things about this exploration is that we can ask it different what if types of questions. And this is one of the big reasons why the Explorer is probably my favorite tool inside the program, is just because of the versatility of this thing. So for example, we could go into this exploration, and what we could do is we could ask questions like, let's say we're looking for, we're looking for securities that are possibly hitting a bottom and then possibly turning up right now. How would we find securities that are bottoming out and starting to turn up? Well, one idea is that if you want to use this tool, we could look for a situation where the trend line itself is pointing downward and the last price or the closing price on the security is crossing up above the end of the trend line. So how do we actually put that criteria here into a scan? So since this has already been written here for us, all we have to do is we have to go to our filter and tell us which one of these columns we want to be true. So for example, if we're looking for securities with a negative slope, then we could basically identify that with column C. So we could go to our filter and we could say, tell me any securities that are coming back with a value of 1 in the report underneath column C or this negative slope. So this will tell us all the securities that have a negative slope. Now, let's also tell it that we want securities where the closing price is crossing up above the end of the trend line. So where we could find that is we could find that where, let's see, the slope is over here on the right-hand side. These are identifying whether the close is crossing above the trend line or crossing down below the trend line. So in this case, I want to know securities that are coming back with a value of 1 underneath column H. So I want column C to be true, and I also want column H to be true. So our two criteria is that we're looking for a negative slope, which is column C, and we're looking for securities that are crossing up above the trend line. Now let's go ahead and rerun this scan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep all the settings the same inside the exploration here. So as we're running these here, I'm not making any changes to the settings, but if I do, of course, I'll let you know before I run the scan there, but we'll just try to keep everything the same. So it should be hopefully a little bit easier to follow. Okay, so now we've got 3 securities. We've got Caterpillar, IBM, and Salesforce. So let's take a look at them. We'll go ahead and select Caterpillar. We'll go ahead and open this one up. So in this situation, what we're looking for is we're looking for a negative slope here on our trend line. And you can see that's definitely the case here. We definitely have a negative slope, and we have a positive cross. You see how that closing price is now crossing above the end of that trend line. So that met the criteria right there. Let's go to our next security. And by the way, just real quick, one of the beautiful features that I love about version 19 here inside of MetaStock is that when you run a scan like this, you can open up the report, you can sort the data in whatever type of configuration you want, and you can close down the report, for example, if you'd like. And then by clicking on the right pointing arrow, what that'll do is it'll go to the next security inside of that report. So I find that a really, really handy way to look at the information after running these different scans. But here's IBM, and this is actually a really good example right here. IBM has definitely been on a negative slide here. You can see we definitely have a negative slope here on our trend line, and the closing price is crossing above the end of the trend line right now. So that's a good example. Let's go to the next one, which is Salesforce. And same thing, Salesforce has been on quite the slide here. And look at this one. We've got a really steep slide, and we have a very bullish bar here at the very end. So this is a situation here where, again, we might be actually looking at a possible bottom on a couple different securities here. And this is one way that you can possibly identify this. So if you're looking for, if you're maybe bearish, what kind of criteria would you put in there? And if that's the case, maybe what you might want to do is you might want to look for a positive slope, and then the closing price of the last bar, for example, to be crossing below the end of the trend line. Now, what if you're like a more of a momentum trader? And let's say, for example, you want to trade in the direction of the overall trends. Well, if that's the case, maybe what I'd want to do is I'd just look for the slope of the trend line. For example, let's say we're looking for bullish situations. I'd be looking for the trend line to be pointing upward or a positive slope, and the closing price to be above the end of the trend line. So let's do that real quick. Let's go back into our exploration here, and let's modify it so we can see how to do that. All right, so to identify a positive slope, we'd be looking for securities that are coming back with a value of 1 underneath column B. So let's go ahead and modify this. So we want column B to be true, all right? And then what we want is we want the closing price to be above the end of the trend line. And that's identified, for example, like right here underneath column F. This is identifying, again, where the closing price is above the trend line. And again, you'll see the explanations up here at the top. So I want column B to be true, and I also want column F to be true, all right? So let's see what that looks like. We'll click on OK, click on Start Exploration, and again, begin the process here. So as you can see, you can modify this thing, and you can put together whatever type of configuration that you want. And the nice thing about it too is all these formulas will be open for you. So, you know, if you want to modify them or put them into other things, that's available there for you as well. All right, so now you can see we've got a number of hits here. We have 9 different securities that are meeting that criteria. So let's just take a quick look at a couple of them. We'll look at the top one here at 3M, and maybe I'll go ahead and close down this report here. So let's do that. Kind of zoom in. But here's a situation where 3M, for example, we have a positive slope, and we have a pretty bullish bar here at the end here. All right, go to the next one. I think that's what, Apple? Is that the next one? Yeah, it is Apple. And again, same thing, a nice positive slope, and the closing price clearly above the end of the trend line. So as you can see, you can put in whatever type of configuration that you want, and very quickly go through and find exactly the type of setup that's of interest to you. Now, to take this one step further, then you might be wondering, well, you know, how good is this? You know, what could we, you know, is there a way that we could test this information, for example? And the answer is yeah, because with any of these formulas, as long as you can access the formulas, you can put them in any parts of the power tools that you want. So let's say, for example, that what we want to do is we want to test some type of trading idea based off of these trend lines here. So maybe a real quick, easy way to do this is to look at this indicator here and say, what if we just bought the security if the trend line was pointing up, and then we just got out of the trade, for example, if the trend line started to point down? Okay, we'll just keep it really simple, and we'll look at long only trades. So in other words, another way to look at this is, and based on this indicator, is we're just going to say if this red line goes above the blue line, I want to be long. And if this red line goes down below the blue line, I want to get out of the trade. Hold on for just 1 sec. All right, so let's go ahead and take that idea and let's put it in the system tester and just see what happens. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll go back into our exploration, because inside the formulas that I created for you are all inside the Explorer here. So we can open this up, And then what I could do is I could go to one of these and I could grab the formulas from any of these. So say, for example, I'll go to column B, and here's the formula to identify if the linear regression slope is positive. So what I'll do is I'll just make a copy of that formula. And by making a copy of that formula, I'll jump over to the system tester. And what we'll do is we'll create a new system test based off of that information. So I'll go to my new system test, all right? And we'll start by giving it a name. And what I'll do is whoops, let me try that again. Let me accidentally clicked on something there. Let's try that again. I'll put in an exclamation point. I typically, whenever I create a new formula or a system, I put a wildcard at the very beginning of the formula name. And that way, all of my formulas and everything else get grouped together. And it's really easy for me to keep track of the ones that I created. If you don't have a naming convention like that, they'll get sorted alphabetically. And some of these lists are pretty big, so it's a little bit harder to keep track of them. So again, I'll put in an exclamation point and then I'll give it a name, and I'll just call this my linear regression test, okay? So I'll go to the buy order, for example. I'll paste in that formula that I just made a copy of, and this will identify if the slope is above the value of 0. So this is going to be our long indication. This is where we'll buy a security if this is true. Then to get out of it or get out of that trade, we'll go to the sell order, and then we'll paste in that same formula, and we'll just say that if the slope goes below the value of 0 or is less than 0, then I want to get out of the trade. That's it. We're going to keep it super simple. So we'll click on OK. And now to test it, we can select it. And then if you want to run it on any securities, let's run it, for example, like on the Dow 30 securities, for example. I'll go down here. I'll select all Dow 30 securities. And then over here on the right-hand side, I'll tell it that I'm just going to be looking for long-only trades. I'll use the last 1,250 records, about 5 years of time. And then for the interval, I'll run it on daily data. And then for my trade options here, let's go ahead and select this so you can see how I've got this set up. I'm going to go to the account here, and you'll see that I'm going to run what's called a points only test. A points only test is just going to return back a raw number of points. So for example, if I buy a security at 10 and I sell it at 15, a points only test is going to say you made 5 points. That's it. It's not going to take into account any type of money or anything else. Now, the reason why I generally run points only tests to get started is because it's super simple to compare the results of other securities against each other. So I can identify, which one's working well, which one's not, and so forth. But we can select that, and then I'll go ahead and click on broker. And by choosing a points only test, you'll see that it takes out of the equation any type of interest rates and margin requirements. And then over here on the right-hand side, you'll see I've got my commission set to 0. And lastly, for my trade execution, I've got everything to be trading at the opening with a 1-period delay. So in this case, what that's going to do, this is going to simulate that if I buy it, for example, on Wednesday, I get a trade on Wednesday. This is going to get me in at the opening on Wednesday, and it's going to get me, and at that point, if I get a signal on Wednesday, it's going to get me in on Thursday. It's going to be a 1-period delay at the opening. So again, I get a buy signal on Wednesday, I'm going to get in on Thursday at the opening. And if I get an exit signal on Friday, this is going to kick me out of the trade at the opening on Monday. That's what this is going to simulate. So we'll go ahead and click on OK, and we'll go ahead and start our system test, and this will begin the process. So again, as you can see here, now this is going to run through those 30 securities, and we can run through as many different types of combinations and ideas as you want, but we'll go ahead and see what kind of results we get just based off of this. And then we'll click on View Report. And then what we can do is we'll kind of make this a little bit bigger so we can see this. And then we can sort, for example, on any of the fields here. And you can see out of the 30 securities, it looks like about 3/4 of them actually tested profitably. And then we had 1/4 of them here that did not test profitably. And then over here on the right-hand side, you can see exactly what the average profit to average loss is, how many different trades were placed, the winners versus losers, and so forth. So what's so nice about doing this, again, is you can plug in any type of trading idea that you want and test these out to identify exactly how profitable, unprofitable these different situations are. And as you can see here, we just did a really simple one of just identifying if the trend line is positive, and we're getting out of the trade if the trend line starts to turn negative. So some other ideas here for you is, if you want to play around with this some more, is to possibly look at some different situations. For example, maybe you could create a trading strategy based off of this indicator in relation to the prices. Or maybe you could add another indicator, for example, to this one. Maybe do like a moving average of it. For example, like what we could do something like this, where we take a moving average and we plot this directly on our indicator like this, and say, let's go ahead and make this like, 25 periods, that's fine. This will give us an idea. But maybe we could use this as some type of buy and sell indicator as well. So there's just so many different ways that you can go with this information. And again, this will all be based off of using this trendline tool here that you see plotted here on your chart there. So again, this is just one idea here for you, but hopefully this gives you some other ideas here of how to possibly use this information there. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to jump over here. I want to jump over here to our and just give you a quick overview of our training here at LearnMetaStock. So at LearnMetaStock.com, our goal is to help you get the most that you can get out of your MetaStock program. And the way that we can help you is we help you in a number of different ways. Is that when you go to our site here, you'll see that we've got a number of different choices up here at the top. But for example, like if you click on live classes, what we do is we'll do up to 3 live classes per week. We do it on different subjects, as we're, going through these, and these classes always change as we're going forward. But what's really nice about this is that if you have questions about something, you can come to a live class, you can ask your questions, and then at the end of the class, we also open it up as well to other like just general questions. So for example, like yesterday, we did an Explorer class. And at the end, if you have any questions about system testing or whatever, we can go into anything that you want there. So the live classes are a really nice feature if you have time, to actually join us at that point. Where the people spend the majority of their time though is in this section here, which is called the video library. And inside our video library, we have hundreds of different videos, trainings, classes, and all kinds of things. For example, like if you can't make our live classes, you can go to this section right here, which is called the live class recordings. And what we do is we post the previous week's classes. We make we record everything and then just put them up on the website. So you can go up and you can see the live classes that we had the previous week. But in addition to that, of course, we have recordings of every topic that we have in these different categories here, for example. Now, the newest category that we've recently have added to the website is this tab right here, which is called the drawing tools. So let me jump back over here to the MetaStock program here for just a second. When you open up our plot or open up a chart here inside of MetaStock, you'll notice that you have a lot of different tools over here on the left-hand side of your chart and over here on the right-hand side of your chart. And if you've got questions about any of those tools, you can jump over to the website here, click on this category here called Drawing Tools, and you'll find instructional videos on those different subjects here. So you can go down through them. These are all pretty short. Most of them are 5 minutes or less. So they're very short, just kind of explaining exactly how to use those drawing tools. And in addition to that, you can go up here to the top and you can also do a search on it as well. So if you have questions about something, either go and do a search on it, or you can go directly to these different categories. But as you can see here, as we kind of go down through here, if you want training on the expert advisor or system testing, for example, you can go to any of these different subjects that are of interest to you. We've got a number of videos just on formula writing. If you really want to get into the program and learn, how to really take advantage of that, we can help get you started with that. But probably one of the most popular areas here is this section right down here, which is called the trading strategies. And this is where we take different ideas from books, magazines, whatever the case is, and then we'll display or basically show you exactly how to duplicate that strategy. So for example, like on this one right here, the super trend indicator, if that's a class or something that you'd like to see, just click on it. And then in addition to that, any of the formulas that we create will be at the bottom of that page. So for example, I created a number of formulas to go along with this class. And when you click on this, this will download the formulas that we created directly into your MetaStock program. And that's what I was saying before. This is where we can save you a massive amount of time and effort here by just going in and just clicking on the different formulas and downloading them directly to your MetaStock program, watching the video, and we can really help kind of really speed up your learning curve there, to say the least. So if you want to take a look at our training, I'd highly recommend, again, like I say, just start at the very top right up here, start with the getting started and just start working your way down. And then as you get through, for example, like some of the basic videos, then you can start to jump around and go into whatever type of category it is that you want there. So, all right, so that's what I have here for you today. Are there if you have any questions, make sure and let us know there, and just send a message over there in the chat window, and we'll be happy to help you out. So I'll go ahead and turn that back over to Jeff and see what we've got here.
I have a lot of questions that are coming in. Prentice B says, great lesson.
Thank you. Very good.
And that's the comment that we have. So there you
Well, you know, the other thing too is, like, if you do think of something later on too and you want to contact me directly, you know, just drop me an email at admin@learnmetastock.com, and I'll be happy to help you out that way too. I know a lot of people, for example, you know, will think about it after the case, or I know some people don't want to ask the questions during a live class as well. So that's okay as well.
Very good. Let's see. Let me go ahead and kind of just share my screen for a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about how people can get LearnMetaStock and kind of what's included in there. Thank you very much, Kevin, for spending some time with us and going through that.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, let me go ahead and do this. I'll go ahead and show my class, or show my slides. I do want to kind of point out all the stuff that's actually included with LearnMetaStock.com. It is a resource that we use when we're actually training our own employees on how to sell MetaStock, how to get into the software, all that kind of stuff. And there's just tons of stuff that's included. Kevin does 3 live classes a week. He has hundreds of videos that are included, with instructional videos, MetaStock videos, videos on Expert Advisor, videos like the one you just watched, system tester video, stops, so many things on so many different things. One of the things I particularly like is how Kevin will go and he'll do complete systems. He'll kind of take a system or a methodology out of stocks and commodities or someplace like that, and he'll create MetaStock formulas for it, templates, indicators, system tests. And actually, they're downloadable from his site. You can kind of look at them. He has all kinds of videos you can go through, and those are just all included with the service. The service, of course, is to help you train using MetaStock. MetaStock, if you're not familiar with this, is a software that's been rated by #1 in its price category for 32 years in a row. And the offer that we're going to do for you, if you want to kind of get access to all of the training, all of the system tests, all that kind of stuff, it's normally just $99 per month. But we do have a new customer special. If you've never used LearnMetaStock, you can get 3 months access for that $99. So it's about $33 a month. To do that, you can go to metastock.com/learnmetastock341. You can give us a call, 800-882-3040, or you can go to metastock.com/sales-chat. So I agree with Prentice. Kevin, great class today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for spending some time with us. Thanks for watching it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, 800-882-3040. For now, stay healthy, stay well, and we'll see you at the next one.